Now, having said that polys and sub-Ds are the way to go, there can be a lot of reasons to use patches or NURBS. A case in point here, where we have some leaves, right? And these leaves, the poly leaf right here is going to exhibit these edges, and those edges are going to be really tricky to get rid of. Even applying a smooth, because when you apply a smooth to something, when you apply a smooth to it, sometimes the shape can collapse a little bit, and you risk destroying any silhouette that any specific shape that you were looking for. Sometimes they can influence the shape a little bit too much. But with a NURBS object, I have a nice few control points here, but I can get it just as curvy as I want, and I'm never going to actually have this problem of these visible edges. And I can come in and edit those CVs at any time and move them around. And again, it's always going to be nice and smooth. So if I come back out to the surface here and turn off transform to grade, go back to surface CV and move them around, I'm always going to have this nice, perfectly smooth line. And the same can be said for the raindrops and dewdrops here. So if I have the raindrops, these are made instance with a particle object from a polysphere, and that's fine. That might be plenty of segments for a certain distance, but if one passes very close to me, or I zoom in too much to it, I'm always going to be able to see some kind of edges. So what I can do is, if it's simple shapes like this, there's really nothing wrong with going in and converting it to an editable patch or an editable or a NURBS object, one of those two things, and then here you'll always have a perfectly smooth spherical object without having to worry about increasing the number of segments, and then if I got closer again, maybe that's still not enough segments. If I have one of those other curve object types, I don't really ever have to worry about it. So I come in here, this is my original polysphere. If I had fewer segments, then I would be running into this problem. But if I convert it to a, let's say, NURBS object, then they'll all be made up of NURBS spheres, and they're always going to tessellate no matter how close I get to them. So with that NURBS sphere, the NURB tessellation options, if I take this raindrop, under here you have this thing called surface approximation, which gives me access to how well this thing is smoothed, let's say. So you have these presets. You can go low, medium, and you can go high. And then the closer I get to it, the more it's going to smooth. And the good part about that is, if I don't need it to be that smooth, I can turn on low and maybe get away with this. I'm rendering far fewer polys. But as I get closer to it, I can turn on high, and I'll get just what I need. And NURBS tessellations can be dependent on the edge being a certain length. And so they're actually smart about how much to divide this geometry. And that's something that polys just don't have. So for me, what I usually do is, if I have simple but very big shapes that do need a lot of subtle curvature, but I don't want to edit these with all this sort of mess, nest of polygons, I just convert them to a NURBS and have a far simpler object to work with, to manipulate the shape for. But then I can always get it as perfectly smooth as I want. So if we go ahead and render this, you're going to see that with the NURBS objects, or the patch objects, I get these being these are perfectly smooth no matter how close I get into them. And even this one here, perfectly smooth no matter how close I get into it or how big the curves are. But on this one, which is a poly object, I see kind of these crunchy edges here, these vertex points.